Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our upgrades webinar. This is our first webinar for the 2205 upgrades. Our next one will be this Thursday at, time right for this. It's going to be Thursday at 3 Eastern. I have that right? Yes, 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. I have to translate my time zones properly. It's going to be the same information that we're covering today. Both this and that one will be posted on the webinar blog, and any questions that come up today, we will post there as well. We're doing the Q&A sessions a little bit different this time. It's going to be after upgrades happen so that everyone will have had some time to start using the 2205 system. That is going to be on January 11th. The registration for that is on the webinar post. Look forward to seeing lots of you there as well. Yes, only Patrick crazy comments. Yes, we'll try to capture our favorites. So my name is Sarah. I'm one of the educators here at Bywater. Excited to be here with all of you today. I am located in Baltimore, Maryland. And Katrina, I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, I'm Katrina Burka. I'm the newest educator on our team, and I'm coming to you from the Dallas area, Plano, Texas. And Heba?
And I'm Heba. I work with the education team. So if you've got tickets that come into education, I've probably been the first pass on them recently. And I am in Kansas, so right smack in the middle of everything.
All right, so I'll just say once more that if you do, it looks like most people probably are, to the chat, posting anything, just make sure it's going to everyone, not just the panelists. We also have Q&A, the Q&A feature for questions once we are talking about the new features. So feel free to use either of them. So we can go ahead and get started. And we're starting off with OPAC and public services. So for that, I'll pass it over to Katrina.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to start off with some consolidation of tools that started. Andrew actually had a really great blog post, I think in 2105. We're continuing the consolidation of some of these HTML customization features for the OPAC. So I'm going to go to Tools, and from Tools, I'm going to HTML Customizations. And from there, you see these two new links. These system preferences are still searchable in System Preferences. And if you have permissions to view them, you'll see the links here to the OPACUserJS and OPACUserCSS. So those customizations of how your OPAC appears will now be linked from HTML customizations. They also linked two new areas of customizations into, if I click on new entry, I've got two new options on the areas of the OPAC that I can customize: OpacMoreSearches and OpacMySummaryNote. So if I go over to the OPAC, where I'm going to see those two are up here. These are the OpacMoreSearches. Right up here, the Bywater Solutions, sign up for newsletter, town website, those will appear in line with your top header navigation. And then if you're logged in, this OpacMySummaryNote will be right here underneath your logged in user info. The next one is, this is a really neat feature that Kelly and Jesse featured in a Monday Minutes blog post, which will be really neat. You have to enable the system preference OPAC suggestion autofill. It will be disabled by default. So if you enable this system preference, which we already haven't enabled, when you come over to the OPAC and you're logged in, if you click on your purchase suggestions and I click a new purchase suggestion, I have an ISBN number for a title that I want to suggest. I can type that in. and it's going to search Google Books for that title, and it found it. So it's going to default in the title and author, auto-populate that for me. So I only have to enter in a couple of more fields manually in order to submit that purchase suggestion. So that's a really neat feature. By enabling that system preference, it turns on this ability to search Google Books for ISBN or ISSN. The next feature we're looking at is two new privacy settings. So on your privacy for a logged in user on the OPAC, they had the delete your checkout history. Now it also offers users the ability to delete their holds history or delete their checkout and holds history together. So it adds two more options for users to control their privacy settings on the OPAC. This next one, we're going to start in
Katrina, before we move on, we have a question. Does search Google Book feature work with Aspen Discovery? And I think that's one we need to get back to them on.
Yes,
because I don't know that one off the top of my head either.
Yep, we'll have to get back to you on that one. We'll pull in someone from the Aspen team to get that question answered. Is there anything else, Heba, before I don't want to cruise too fast, miss any questions.
One actually just came in with, does the default privacy now affect holds history as well?
The hold history, the default, what's the question? Say that again, Sarah.
Does the default privacy now affect holds history as well? And I believe that is in reference to 29525. Drop down the C button.
If they have it selected, it will.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that will affect the hold history if the user selects to delete their hold history. But it will not, it will depend on your system preferences. Can I move along? We good? All right. So the next one, we have a new system preference that's being introduced. It is, I'm going to put in mandatory. On self-registration, we have already this system preference called Patron Self-Registration Borrower Mandatory Field. The new system preference that we're introducing in 2205 is Patron Self-Modification Mandatory Field. When this system preference, the new system preference, will be automatically populated by whatever you have entered, if you have anything entered in the Patron Self-Registration Borrower Mandatory Field. What this allows you to do is to configure the initial registration required fields separately from the modification required fields. So selecting on, these are the ones that we have the initial registration, we're requiring email, first name, surname, and password. And separately from that, I can say when someone comes in to modify their patron account after that initial registration, I also want them to enter their zip code, for instance. So what that looks like on this side is if I'm logged in, I can see if I want to edit my personal details, I've already created an account. If I want to modify that account, I have to provide my zip code. Now, if I log out and I initially register, it doesn't ask me for my zip code because that's not on that system preference for initial registration. So it just calls out different fields that you can make required, whether it's the initial registration or modification later. The next one is advanced search types. What this does is configure advanced search types differently on the staff client and on the OPAC. So if I go into advanced search, and I can come up to advanced search here, I'll see here that I've got item type, collection, and shelving location available to me on the OPAC. And right now I have those three available to me in the staff client, but I can configure those separately. So if I say, you know what, I actually don't want to search by shelving location on the OPAC, I save that system preference. And now if I come over and refresh on the OPAC, my shelving location just disappeared from the advanced search, but I still will see that on the staff client, I still have shelving location. So this just gives you a little bit more flexibility to configure advanced search separately on the staff client and on the OPAC. The last thing is on advanced search or on searching in the OPAC. When I scroll down, we've always had in the last couple of releases this hovering navigation that lets us select all, clear. But if we have lots and lots of results, it's been difficult to go back to the top. This new green button with the up arrow down here at the bottom is new. So I can keep scrolling, and clicking that button right there takes me right back to the top of my search results in the OPAC. So that little green button right here down at the bottom right is the new feature in 2205.
That for me is one of those ones that is small but very handy when you've got a long list of results.
For sure.
Very good quality of life improvement. We also had some conversation in the chat, for those who haven't been watching, of what is the longest system preference? Is it patron self-registration borrower mandatory field? That is not. Andrew pipes in with patron self-registration expire temporary accounts delay is 50 characters.
Oh, man.
One more question in Q&A. Was the back to top just for the OPAC or for both sides? I'm guessing that both sides mean staff interface.
It's just on the OPAC. It does not appear in the staff client yet.
Yes. Any other questions on that group before we hop into the next section? Okay. All right. I will now share my screen for patrons and circulation. All right, is this showing up for everybody? Great. Something's around here. Okay. All right, so for patrons and circulation, we've got quite a few. Some of these are in Monday Minutes or feature posts already, but show you what we've got here. Okay, all rearranged. Okay, so the first one that we've got, there is not actually much to show for this one, but I will talk about it. It is 26346, the real-time holds queue update. This one is sponsored by Montgomery County Public Libraries. I see a few of you joining us here today. It's great to see you here. So this is a feature, it's a new system preference called real-time holds queue. I guess I can at least go over to that. So real-time holds queue, you can either set it to enable or disable updating the holds queue in real time. This will be set to disable by default, but you can always turn it on if you wish. So what this will do is you can use this either in addition to the holds queue cron or instead of, depending on what works for your library. There's not really sort of a universal answer for what will be preferable. It will be kind of case by case. I see there's some excitement about that one. That's great. So what this will do is use background jobs to update the queue for a specific bib when prompted by specific actions. Those actions include items on the bib being checked in, checked out, new items being added to the bib, holds on that bib being canceled, filled, or modified. So when one of those triggering actions happens, Koha will use background jobs to update the queue for that specific bib without having to rebuild the entire queue. So if you are, for instance, running the holds queue cron every hour, and you also have this set to enable, in between that hour, when one of these triggering actions happens, the queue for that specific bib will be updated without the whole entire queue having to be updated. So this means that the queue will stay the same for bibs where none of those triggering actions takes place, unless or until you are running the holds queue cron. Seeing a question, is it important to get the holds queue, the cron disabled if you're enabling real-time holds queue? They can coexist peacefully. It really just depends on what works for your library. If you have the cron off, nothing will update for any bibs until an action, one of those triggering actions happens that would force an update. For some libraries, that's going to be a good thing because it means that items will stay where they are on, like, for instance, on a specific library's queue until the queue is rebuilt. For some libraries, they're going to want things to move around more. It kind of depends on how often you are actually taking items, like pulling items for holds. It really is sort of a case-by-case thing. Let me see, are there any downsides to updating the holds queue in real time? System slowness? There should not be any system slowness issues. The only, not downside necessarily, but the only potential issue would be if you have libraries who are printing out the holds queue and using it to walk around the library throughout the day to pull their items. That is potentially, depending on that versus how often you would run the holds queue cron, that could result in like pulling items off the shelves that another library that have the cron has already updated, or pardon me, the real-time queue feature has already updated, but that's not necessarily, it's not going to be an issue for everyone. It really kind of depends on your workflows in your library. Seeing a couple others here. Does this have any effect on those of us running custom reports on the queue? I will have to check into that. I think it might depend on the report and exactly what the specifics are, but we'll check into that and get back to you. This new feature won't update a printout. If it's printed, unfortunately, let me see here, just to clarify, if we enable the new, no, so if you enable, so the question here is, if we enable the new real-time holds queue, the system will default to that rather than updating based on the cron. No, it will actually use both. So if you have the cron running, say every hour, that will continue running. And then in addition to that, between that hour, if someone checks in an item that fills a hold on the queue, the queue for that specific bib will update. And then again, at the hour, the whole queue will update based on the cron. The cron, again, it's going to update it's going to rebuild the entire queue, whereas the real-time update will just rebuild the queue for that specific bib that has been prompted by one of those triggering actions. I know smart paper printouts would be great, but not quite there yet. All right, any other questions on that one? So if we check in a cart full of pulled holds, that will cause it to rebuild for all those check-ins. Yep, exactly, because as those get filled, it will rebuild. And if that means that the next, for the next hold on that bib, it's best filled by another library, that will rebuild as that check-in happens. Some of our holds queues take 30 minutes to populate. Sounds different than the cron. For this last question, some of our holds queues take 30 minutes to populate. We were told this would change that, but it sounds different than the cron. So I would want to check into the specifics of exactly sort of what the previous conversation was. It is different than the cron because it's only updating what the bibs that have one of those triggering actions, so it's not needing to rebuild the entire queue. So it does sort of work differently, but I would definitely want to check into what the specifics were with any kind of conversation that happened previously.
Then the only other question here, Sarah, was, is that an exhaustive list of the actions that will trigger a real-time holds queue update?
The one that I need to verify is an item being deleted from the bib. That is the one, that is one that I need to verify. But any updates to this will be on the webinar post. Any other questions on this one? Oh, okay. All right, so next we've got 21729 and putting that together with 30108. So the first one is when reverting a hold, the expiration date should be reset. And the second is allow making hold dates required. There's a feature post for this that talks about these two, and then a couple of other hold related changes. So the first one is one that is going to be great for a lot of libraries. So for this, so previously, all hold expiration dates were saved in the expiration date field in the reserves table. So when the hold was initially placed, this would be set by either the default hold expiration date per system preferences, or if the patron requested a hold not needed after date, that would go in that expiration date field. What would happen was that then when the hold was filled, that date in the reserves table would be replaced by the last date that the item would be held for pickup based on the reserves max pickup delay setting. The problem with this was that when a filled hold was reverted, Koha then retained, because it had overwritten the first expiration date, it could not return to that. So the expiration date field retained the date generated based on the reserves max pickup delay number of days, since it had no kind of record of the other. So for instance, if I, as of 2111, placed a hold with a hold not needed after date of January 15th, when the hold was filled, that expiration date field would update to the number of days. If reserves max pickup delay was set to 7, that expiration date field would update to, I guess that would be if I filled the hold today, December 13th. If I went and reverted the hold, Koha would retain, the hold would no longer be filled, but it would retain that 12/13 expiration date, which oftentimes would not be enough time to fill the hold before it automatically got canceled by the system. So what 2205 does is it creates a separate field called patron expiration date for patron generated expiration dates. And it changes the behavior when holds are reverted without a patron generated expiration date. And patron generated expiration date can, in this case, means either the whole, if the patron places a hold in the OPAC, the hold not needed after date that they set there, or if I place one here, as I'm about to do, the hold not needed after date set in the staff interface. So for instance, I'm going to place a hold here, get my barcode ready. I'll place this for myself. All right, so I'm going to say that if I can't get this by January 15th, I do not want it. Place that hold. 14. I'm going to go over to my logs. And so we've got this new field in our logs. So we've got patron expiration date is 1/15/23. And then the expiration date is also set as 1/15/23. If I go back into the hold here, I've got my 1/15/23. If I go ahead and fill this hold, I go back on over here. My expiration date, based on the reserves max pickup delay, has updated to 12/8/22 because I want to make my patrons' lives difficult. And then the log would update that as well. But the nice thing here is that if I go ahead and revert my waiting status, instead of retaining that 12/8/22 date, I'm now back to 1/15/23. So that just makes that process a lot easier. Staff do not have to remember to go in and reset that expiration date or ask patrons what they would like it set to, since there was no way for staff to go back and look and see what it used to be. If either when patrons place holds in the OPAC or the hold is placed to the staff interface, there is not a hold not needed after date set. When a patron reverts a hold, this will be blank. So even in those cases, it will not retain that date based on the reserves max pickup delay date. So staff may need to go in and set an expiration date if they want to at that point, but it at least will not be that short date, potentially limiting how long patrons are even on the holds list. And all right, seeing, okay, yes, there is a post on that. Glad this sounds like it'll be a useful one for people. One of the related features, new features, is 30108, which is to allow making hold dates required. So over here in the OPAC, if I'm placing a hold, actually, let me start here. So this is a new system preference called OPAC mandatory hold dates. So you can now in the OPAC choose to make no hold dates, only an end date, only a start date, or both hold dates required when patrons place holds in the OPAC. If you are using the feature, the start date, these two do have to be enabled, so just keep that in mind. But once that is set, as it is here, so you pop over to place a hold, you can see that we have our required hold starts on date and our hold not needed after date. This is, again, the date that will populate that patron expiration date field in the hold, so that if it's reverted, it will be able to go back to that. So that is can be a handy new one. All right. Another one for hold is 27868, adding the expiration date to the holds awaiting pickup report. So previously, so on 21/11, let me adjust some of these sizes here. As of 21/11, in my hold expiration, holds awaiting pickup report, I have the date that it's been waiting since, but there was no way from here to tell what day a hold actually expired. So if your holds are not automatically canceling and you wanted to see, did this expire 1 day ago or 3 days ago, you had no way to know from here without clicking into the actual hold, which just can make things slower if you do need that amount of detail. In 2205, we've got a new expiration date column. So it shows right there. You can immediately see right from both the holds waiting and the holds waiting over report what day the hold actually will expire or did expire. So that is a handy new one. Similarly, another small one that will make life easier for staff, we've got the ability to show the patron category in the holds queue. So if I hop over to my holds queue, And this is 29760. So over in my holds queue, we have a new patron category column. And so just like all the other columns, you can sort by this one, you can filter by this column. If for whatever reason, this is part of your process when you're filling holds, it's now accessible right from here without having to click into patron information or check notes or go any further than right here. And finally, for holds, we have 30081, which is displaying the item type in the patron's hold table. So I go over to the patron scout. In their hold table, there is this new item type column. So what this will do is it will show the specific item type in certain circumstances. So when the hold is filled, it will show you the item type. If the patron has placed a hold on one specific item on that bib, it will show the item type. If the hold is in place, but it has not been filled, and it is a hold on the bib level, not the item level, you will not yet see the item type because Koha, even since Koha is pulling the item type from the actual item, it does not know yet what item is filling it. And potentially, of course, you could have multiple item types on that bib. Even if all items on that bib are the same item type, it's not going to show here until one of these, unless one of these two conditions are met. All right. The next one is one that I am very happy came through. It is 26346. Add an option to make a public list editable by library staff only. So previously with lists, we had three options. So if a list was public and you wanted to have, if it's public because you want it on the OPAC, so that patrons can make use of it. The issue with that was that your options for who could change the list were either the owner of, either nobody, the owner of the list only, or anybody seeing the list. And so what that meant was that patrons who saw that list and were logged in could potentially make changes to that list, which hopefully no patrons are going to take advantage of that and cause trouble, but it made some libraries nervous, understandably. So what this does is it adds a new option for staff only. So I can now have a list that is public, change it to staff only so that only staff accounts can, with list permissions, can make changes to that list. That means you can collaborate on lists that are going to be showing on the OPAC and will not have to, or that you're using internally without having to be concerned that patrons might try to cause trouble. Question for the Aspen team, wondering whether there are any circumstances under which a public list created in Koha would be accessible via Aspen. Well, we will definitely have to check on that. I am not familiar enough with how Aspen handles Koha's list functionality, since I know it has its own list functionality. So we'll get back, we'll check in on that one. Your patrons were more than happy to change the list the staff created. Yeah, that was always the concern. And okay, I see a question in Q&A. So where do you set the permission for staff only lists? So anyone, actually, let's see about this. So in permissions, so I actually would have to test this, but my inclination would be that anyone with this permission will be able, if they have this permission, they will be able to edit those lists that are for allowable to be edited by staff only, but I will confirm that to make sure that these are not conflicting. All right. Any other questions on that one?
There was one more in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Right above Rhonda's comment. Is this your staff? Is that your staff? We are in a multi-library group.
Okay. We'll have to check on that. That is, yep, I will confirm how that works, depending on independent library settings or the other various related settings, but that is a good one. Thank you. Any others? Okay. All right. And so finally, I've got three about the changes to the account details now welcome email functions. So actually I'm going to start with the second one in this list, which is 9097, add an option to trigger a welcome mail manually. So this was covered in a Monday Minutes post. So I will, so you can see basically this same thing there. But when a new patron is created, if their email address is not added initially, but you add it in later and you want them to be able to have that welcome email, there is now this handy button under More to send a welcome email. So once I do that, it's going to hop me over to their notices. Another nice thing about this is that the notice, the way that notices display is different than it used to be, which is kind of a nice cleaner layout. So this is the new welcome notice that will be in tools and slips. This is replacing the account details notice. Bywater is going to be checking for libraries that are using the account details notice. But if you are using the account details notice, any customization that you've made to that notice will need to be manually copied over into the new welcome notice. The welcome notice, let me hop over to that, uses, so I'm here in tools and then notices and slips. So we've got the old account details notice, which is being left just for historical reference. But the one that this email will now be using is the welcome notice. And it uses template toolkit. So you can see it's got the default is to have, it's nice because it's got the library name, patron's name, of course, the URL, pardon me, the OPAC, a link to the OPAC so that patrons can easily search from here, the library card number. The PIN number will no longer be sent in this email, but if there is any customization to your account details notice that you will want here, if you are comfortable editing this, you can copy that over, but since it is template toolkit and that can be a little trickier, always feel free to send us a ticket and we can help get that changed over for you. The other pieces to this are 29005, which is adding an option to send a welcome notice for new patrons added via patron imports. So the other piece of this is these all go together. So there, prior to 2205, or previously, there was a system preference called auto email OPAC user. It has been renamed auto email new user because it used to only apply to patrons who were created in the system. Now it applies to patrons who are created multiple ways. So we've got this preference. You can send this notice. Again, it notes here that it's using that welcome notice. So by having this enabled, this will send to patrons who are created in the staff interface. And per bug 30214, it will also send the notice to patrons who add themselves via self-registration. So as long as they have an email on their account, which presumably they will, and they of course will need to if they're verifying by email, they can get this notice as well. But the other really nice piece is that there is an option to send this notice automatically to patrons who are added via patron imports. So this is great if you are, for instance, bringing patrons in, if it's a school or some similar circumstance where you're importing patrons. Over here in tools and import patrons, we've got our new option here to send that welcome notice to everyone who is imported here. So that's just an easy way to get patrons your link to your catalog and their library card number as soon as you import them, so that they can go ahead and get started using your catalog as soon as they're registered.
Sarah, Michelle is asking if there's a text equivalent for patrons that prefer text messages over emails.
There is not at this point, as far as I understand things. I know that there is an SMS here, but my understanding of the functionality is that it does just email. If that is not, I'll confirm that though, and that will be part of the update in the blog post. Yeah, the patron import, being able to do this from patron import is nice. All right, just scrolling back through the chat. Okay. Yep. All right. Any other questions? Oh, I see. Okay. Account details. All right. So previously, the account details email would only generate if the account contains certain bits of data. Does it still check something like that? Or will it generate for all patrons if it's on? My understanding is that if there is an email, it will generate, but I will confirm and update the post with that. Any other? Oh, and I should say also, there will be a feature post. There is the Monday minutes about the manual welcome mail trigger, but there will be one coming for the other two pieces. Any other questions on this one? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Heva then.
All right, so we're gonna hop over into our tools and look at some new things that have been brought in with this update. So one thing that I think we mentioned, and somebody mentioned in the beginning that they're really excited about, is the better granularity on the inventory tool. I know that's been a bugaboo for folks because people use shelving locations and collection codes and call numbers in very unique to their institution ways, and the inventory tool hasn't always been very friendly with that. So now you have an ability to filter on location and collection and library. So hopefully with all of, and call number, hopefully between all of those facets, you can actually create a shelf list to do inventory that reflects, I have done inventory on this section of my collection in a way you haven't been able to do before. All the other bells and whistles are still there, whether you want to count lost, missing, damaged, all that stuff. The big component is that now you can add a location and a collection together. So I know anybody who's had like different reference sections has been kind of frustrated by the inventory tool. So that is inventory. And if you, as always, if you have questions about inventory or like want to step through how to use it, put in a ticket, we'll help you out with that. Another new tool. Sorry, I've got the two monitors set up and I'm always losing my mouse. We're going to go back home. Related to managing your MARC records when you import them. Kelly and Jesse already have a wonderful Monday Minutes about this, and it was sponsored by Fargo Public Library. So thank you, Fargo. So I have some staged MARC records already that I matched on the ISBN and I said, go ahead and replace the incoming record. Now I have the option. You've always been able to see the two records side by side, but if I look at my records and I decide, no, I really want the one I had before, I can ignore that. I can ignore the match and go ahead and bring in the new record anyway, or disregard. So you can do it on the fly. If I had multiple matches in here, I could decide one by one how I wanted to treat them. Was there a question that just came in on the?
There was a question on your
Okay.
previous one on inventory tool, but it looks like Andrew answered it in the chat.
Okay.
Eileen asked if for those libraries using BISAC instead of Dewey, does it work? And Andrew said it probably will, Eileen, but it depended on what your call numbers look like. Thank you, Andrew.
And that sounds like a put in a ticket. We'll take a look at it and tell you.
Heather asks, does this on-the-fly matching work for authorities too, or only for bibs?
I have to check on that. I have to check on that and test with some authorities, because right now I only have a sample bib file. So we'll get back to you on that one. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. I'll try to remember to pause for a second to give people a chance to get them in. Another useful new tool is if you have been using the automatic item modifications by age. Previously, you could only go based on date accessioned, which is great for doing things like new books going to not new. This does have a corresponding cron job that needs to be enabled. And that part isn't new. But the change to automatic modifications by age is that you can now use other fields besides date accessioned. So anything that has kind of a date in it on the items. So date last seen, replacement price date, date last borrowed, damaged on, lost on, withdrawn on. You can formulate rules that will automatically update via cron based on conditions that you've set. So I was just playing around with this, and I created a rule that if the item was last seen a year ago, it's not lost, it's not on loan, let's go ahead and move it over to missing. That might be aggressive depending on your library, but that is an example of something that you could do with the new ability. Anything that any pre-existing rules that you have will still use date accessioned. So that doesn't change anything that already existed. It just gives you new options for creating new rules moving forward. Let's see, moving on along. And before I move on, questions? Okay. So next up, we have quick spine label editing. That's another one where you now have an ability to do some more stuff on the fly. So I have my sample record here. Okay, I'm gonna grab this one. So if I want to quick print a spine label on this, I can unlock, edit this label. Maybe I want to put Juve in front because we're redoing our shelf labels. I can do that, block it back up, print my label. This one does rely on having spine label auto print set to don't. And there's also a system preference spine label format that you can use to add fields to this level. But if you've been changing your shelving scheme, you need to change your labels. You can do this quickly and easily. It will not change the item call number on the record. It's strictly if you are doing something to help your patrons find things on the shelf more easily. And then I actually went a little out of order. This also brings us to another update, which is improved messaging on the suppressed in OPAC. So if you have a record suppressed in the OPAC via the 942N, previously there was like a little pop-up box at the top of the title that said suppressed item or record suppressed in OPAC. And if you came down here under OPAC view, there was a link that may or may not work depending on your hidden items and hidden bibs settings in your OPAC. Now it just clearly says it's suppressed in the OPAC. There's no link. It's not going to take you to any weird unresolvable link. So that's where that has moved to. If you're used to seeing it above the title, just look down a little bit further.
Another question came in about the spine label printer. Actually also came in via chat, essentially the same question. Does this work via the label creator tool or the quick spine label creator tool? And
I believe you can also
go on, sorry.
I believe you can also do it from the tools, the quick spine label tool in here as well. Because that was the first place I tested it.
Okay.
And yeah, it's the same deal.
Okay, and the question in chat, does that spine label editing only work for quick spine label printing?
I will have to double check. My gut level answer says yes. It's just meant for the quick version, but I will double check and we can put that in our update. And I'll know it for the next webinar. Anything else? All right, so we'll move on to admin then. This next one is a change that is kind of a foundational change for things to come. And that is bug 28786, which is enabling two-factor authentication for the staff client. This one is kind of a soft launch right now. Staff have the ability to opt into two-factor authentication. Admin can certainly encourage their staff to use two-factor authentication. It does not require it. It's just now this exists and you can do it. So I finally made myself an account in our test site. Under more, you can manage two-factor authentication. So I have a Google Authenticator on my phone for anything that I want a little more security on my logins. I'm not going to enable it right now, but it exists. It's here. Unfortunately, in testing, Kelly recently found a kind of a big glaring bug with this one, which is that only staff with top-level cataloging permissions can activate this. So at present, a portion of staff will not be able to use this. Hopefully that's one that gets fixed up pretty quickly in a forthcoming point upgrade. And I believe in the 2211, there will be options for libraries to make it mandatory. But right now, this is just the soft launch. It's here. Your staff can use it. Questions about that? And there will be a dedicated blog post about it as well. Okay. Next up, we have a couple of enhancements from the Colorado Correctional Institutions, part of the Colorado Library Consortium, and they are bringing us some more security options. So the first one is bug 29924, which is introducing password expiration to patron categories. So if we go to administration, patron categories, we're going to say adult non-residents have passwords that expire after 3 days because, how did Sarah put it? We want to make life difficult for them. Probably not a good example of this, but if you have security standards for your institution where they would like staff passwords to expire every 30 days, you could say staff accounts expire at 30 days. And then that corresponds with bug 29925, which adds a set new password page for patrons with expired passwords. The other place that the password expiration comes up, I'll look at Casey's account here. It is under library use. You have a password expires field on there. So Casey's account expires today. Let's see. With any changes to patron categories, this doesn't affect any existing accounts in that category. It will affect new accounts moving forward. That's a thing I was testing a little bit. Are there questions about password expiration?
Oh, there's all sorts of questions in the chat.
Okay.
There's a bunch of questions related to the two-factor authentication.
Okay.
I believe some of those have been answered.
Mm-hmm.
So the first was, can staff use their Google credentials to log in to the staff interface? That was Eileen asking about SSO, and Sarah's going to get her set up with a ticket. The second was, does the two-factor authentication verify by text, email, authenticator app, ? And then the other question, would two-factor work with Bitwarden's authenticator, or does it have to be a Google authenticator? And I believe that was answered, that the bug notes said it would work with any authenticator app.
Yeah, and we can provide more clarity on a follow-up post, but my understanding is, like, there are various authenticating products out there that can be configured. I truthfully just did not want to hassle with a two-factor every time I logged in on an account that I barely ever use. So I will play a little bit more with that and see what the options are. And that sounds like that might be good things to add in our blog post. So.
And then there was a question about 29925. Will Koha remember previous passwords?
I will look into that. In my experimentation, I feel like I was able to reuse a password, but I'm going to double check and confirm that. Making a note here. Other questions?
I think those are the only ones so far.
Okay. Okay, so next one.
One more question actually just came in about
Shoot.
passwords.
Okay.
Is there a way to create a new patron account with a password that is immediately expired so that the patron must change it right away?
We were playing with the self-registration, making them expire after a day. I think that's probably going to be your best bet. But again, I will confirm that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And any other lingering questions? All right. This next one is one I am very excited about. It is the reports enhancement. Kelly also already beat us to a wonderful Monday Minutes. So that is on our website. Sorry, is it 413? So previously, if you wanted to link out to anything in Koha, you had to jury rig a little bit of concatenation with the URL and add the biblio number onto the end. And it was It didn't export nicely. Now we have built-in linking in the reports, and not only that, it has functionality. So this is a little bit of a nonsense report, but it highlights each of the columns that will automatically link now in 2205. So if you have a borrower number column in your table, you can view the patron, edit the patron, or check them out right from the report. If you have their card number, it goes right to checkout. If you have an item number, it says edit record or view record. That edit record is actually a link to edit the item. It goes right into that form for you. And then biblio number will also give you the options to view the record or edit the record. And again, takes you right in to the record. So again, automated linking with functions that you don't have to hard code in. Very excited about this one. Like, it is going to make reporting life so much easier for so many of our partners. And you still have all your same options of like your batch actions from the report. That hasn't changed, but now you can do more. I'm very excited about that. Follow-up questions on that one?
Just a whole lot of love in the chat. Everybody loves it. Some lamenting about all of the expertise that we learned in SQL that is now just automated.
Yes, it's automated, but if my time writing reports has taught me anything, there is always a complicated report that is going to take ironing out. So other questions? Excitement, general excitement. Very cool feature on that one. And then the last one is also just another like cool, fun thing. So we're going to go back home and into our tools. And we have a barcode image generator. So the thing that we were really excited about with this that a lot of libraries might like is the ability to create some QR codes. So you want to put something on a flyer, direct people to a page on your website. Hey, is this book all checked out? Check out our ebooks. You can put in a URL here. So we'll do generate a QR code. It has an embeddable link. So if we need to put that in anything, we have that available. This is the thing we kind of saw as like the big toy, the toy factor for our partners. You can do different other types of barcodes. So something I thought of is if you don't want to mess with the patron card creator and you want to just print out a new barcode for a patron who's lost their little plastic tag, that might be something you could do. But there's a lot of use for libraries being able to generate a barcode on the fly here. It does not link in itself to any sort of analytics tracking. So if you're trying to see how many people follow up on it, your best bet there is going to be to either send it to something on your website that you have analytics on for already. It's not going to create that. But here's just one more arsenal for staff who are trying to get their patrons to engage with their collection in new and interesting ways.
I have another question came in. What do the automated links look like from the report feature when they're exported? I just exported the report that you had been playing with, which you may already have done, but I can.
Yeah, do you want to share it? Since you already have it.
And this is with numbers, so I guess there is the possibility that it will show different if in Excel or any other feature, but it looks just like things would normally look when they're exported. So,
and that's like one of those quality of life improvements, because before you could either like force a URL link in the report and it would export hideously in Excel, or you could like have the nice convenient links for use in Koha. So I would tend to write duplicate reports for people of here's a printable version and here's one for in Koha. And now you get it all in one. No fuss, no muss.
So I know we are a couple minutes past the hour. Are there any other questions? First of all, thank you all for sticking with us. I really appreciate it. Excited to see how excited people are about a lot of these features. That's great. Are there any other questions before we wrap up today? Nope. Okay. So the recording to this will be posted on the webinar posts, which I can throw back in the chat. The recording for Thursday's webinar will also be there. And the questions that are asked both today and on Thursday will be updated on that post as well. Once those are, oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have a question in the Q&A. When will this be deployed?
This meaning the upgrade?
This upgrade, yeah.
December, end of December is when they're starting to be rolled out. For if you're curious for your specific library, we can check into that, but they're starting at the end of December.
And if it hasn't already, it should be, you should have a little news update soon in your staff client with the specific date that your upgrade is happening on. They roll out in kind of staggered fashion over the majority over a week. So
yeah. Yes. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. We'll update those posts as noted, and we'll email everyone who is here once those are updated. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.